I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Number 5. Welcome to the meeting this morning of the San Angelo Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. We're glad to have you. Our third item on the agenda will be public comment. This is the time that we allow the comment from the public, anything that needs to be talked about or discussed, anything you want on a future agenda. This is the time to stand up and be heard. Obviously, there is no public comment, so we'll move on to number 4, which is the approval of the March 12, 2015 Policy Board minutes. Does anyone have a chance to read them?
I move for approval.
All right, I do have a move to approval from Mr. Neighbors.
I will second.
Judge Floyd seconds. Is there any discussion on this before we move on? Public discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Number 5 has been pulled. Number 6 is the discussion and approval of amendments to the San Angelo Metropolitan Planning Organization bylaws and any connection thereto. Mr. Del Rey, would you take over, please?
All right, sir. After our,
Morning, John.
at our last meeting, we approved and adopted the new bylaws for the organization. Shortly after the adoption, there were some issues that were brought to life. Mainly that being with appointing, the representatives appointing members to the Technical Advisory Committee. And so what I've done, I've consulted with some other MPOs, looked at their bylaws, and the question really before the board today is, should a board member be allowed to appoint another board member to serve on the Technical Committee?
What do the other boards do in that?
Well, the Technical Committee is the advisory committee that was created by the board.
Right.
And so the technical just provides advice, provides strategic directions, makes recommendations on policies. And so with the way that we structured the bylaws, each organization could choose a policy board member. For the city, it's 2. For TechSite, it's 2. And then those representatives could choose 2 members to serve on the Technical Advisory Committee, or 1 TechSite in the city. And so the issue with some of the board members serving on other boards for representative organizations, there is a possible conflict because board members can appoint anyone that's affiliated with their organization to serve on a TAC. So some of the board members do serve on other board members, or they're affiliates of other board members' organizations. And so our question is, should a board member be allowed to appoint another board member to serve on a TAC?
Do other NPOs have another way of doing that?
No, most of the purpose of the advisory committee is to provide advice to the board, so you keep them separate. So typically, you have your policy board members, which are your decision makers, and then you have your technical members.
So Joe, how do other MPOs that you work with handle that dual membership? In Amarillo, I know we had people that were, I was the TPMD, so I was on policy, but I was also on technical advisory committee. So
I talked with Amarillo. They had the district engineer and the director, and now it is just 1. They've since changed their bylaws to just have 1 person on there.
which one?
I believe it was the district engineer.
But
On both.
I bet not. I bet it's the TPMD.
I'm sorry, yes, you're right. I'm sorry, yes, sir, you're right. That's correct.
Other areas pretty much leave it up to the entity. In other words, you leave it up to TechSite, the district engineer appoints whoever he wants from TechStop to serve on that.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well,
That's pretty much the way,
well, and along that line of reason, is the intent to have the board approve nominations for each of these committee positions?
No. No, the board doesn't have to approve the nominations for the TAC. We left that up to the organization, so they could choose who they wanted to, who they felt could best represent their organization in a technical capacity.
Is there a fear that this board is gonna control what the technical advisory committee puts out? Is that the intent?
Well, I wouldn't say fear, but it's definitely a concern, because again, you have members that sit up here that could be on the technical committee, they could be appointed to the technical committee, and so it would look a little suspicious to have several board members serving on in a technical capacity, also serving as a decision maker. And also, it somewhat defeats the purpose. Why serve? I mean, why have, if you have a technical, for us, it's gonna be a total of 10 people. I mean, so you could have at least 3 or 4 board members that serve on the technical. So the question is, why would you want to do that?
Yeah, and that's okay with me.
I mean, the thing about the bylaws is, again, each organization gets to choose who they want to sit on the board. So if somebody felt that they would be more beneficial on the technical, then they could always sit on the technical instead of on the board.
You guys have concerns at all?
Doesn't make any difference either way to me. I don't see the problem. What do you think about it, John?
I don't think it's a problem. I think our candidate pool, especially if we get deeper than the technical advisory committee, is pretty shallow. We're gonna have a lot of overlap by nature.
I personally rely on the TPMD a lot to help me stay in tune with what's going on with the transportation system. So I really need him on this committee, but he kind of runs the technical part of our operation. So to exclude him kind of handicaps that, but we can work around that if the board's concerned about that.
I just want to make sure that there's, the technical committee is just not dominated, that they're able to have open discussions without being influenced by the board. I mean, the best way that I could kind of think of it is if you had a city council person appoint another city council person to serve on planning commission, or that you had a city council representative always showing up at planning commission meetings, zoning board of adjustment meetings. I mean, those things do typically influence the recommendations and the decisions that come out of that committee.
But it's also educational.
Yes, it is, but as long as that doesn't happen, then I think it's
The,
okay. We just want to be able to
the wording that a policy board member cannot even attend TAC meeting was interesting
Yeah, I would
because
just totally strike that.
if y'all, I mean, we can open it. It's a committee meeting. It is a committee meeting. It's not a public meeting. But again, we're just trying to keep it flowing, keep the discussions going in the committee meetings so that we can, be productive and move forward.
Or from the county's perspective, I can see where Dora is headed and probably best practices make sense, but I'm not sure if the county's ever adopted any best practices about anything. But we have numerous committees. In fact, we have a standing committee assignment that we go through every year and appoint commissioners to those committees, and they bring recommendations back to us as the policy board. I've never seen an issue or conflict with it in our organization. It certainly hadn't awarded any lively discussion in the past on certain issues. It's certainly fully well discussed it, but I could understand where could be a potential for some conflict there or some collusion, but we live and breathe it daily at the county, and I've never had really an issue with it.
I think,
Go ahead, Phil.
go ahead, you haven't said anything yet. I think it's a valid concern, fundamentally, because if you wind up with a de facto spokesperson from the policy board on the technical advisory committee and vice versa. I think fundamentally, there's an issue. I think knowing the people in the room and where the strengths are and where the expertise is, I don't really have a problem with it, but I admire you for bringing it up. I think it took courage to point it out that it could potentially be conflict.
And my suggestion, if that ever arose, that we believe that we revisit the bylaws, I think would be my suggestion.
Well, I agree. I think by talking about it, we see that there is a potential for possible conflicts and I think this group has worked hard to avoid that and so forth. So now that we have raised the issue and discussed it, I, as a non-technical person, more in the policy arena, I want the technical people in your organizations to be a part of that. And so if that means some on both, I think that's very helpful, but let's just move forward and see if it ever becomes something. I don't think any of us would be too shy to say, hold it, let's talk about this before it's just set in stone.
So what do we need? You need a,
We can either leave them as is, or if we leave it as is without the suggested changes, then there is no issue.
and you did say something about striking the closed meeting, and I think that would be I like meetings to be open, whether they're technical or advisory, personal opinion.
Open but not public in the sense of public notice and all that, just.
Yeah, just open.
Distinction, right.
Just tell them the mayor he can't go to it.
Yeah, just tell me to stay away, and that's fine.
So you wouldn't have to post the meetings,
Right.
but they would not be closed if somebody said, hey, I'd like to attend and listen.
Within that organization is what we
Okay.
are, is the way
Right.
we kind of talked about it.
Okay.
So your typical citizen could walk in and sit in those.
Why
meetings.
would you not want a typical citizen to walk into a meeting?
Because it's a committee meeting.
I disagree. I like the transparency of every meeting being
Well,
open to
if-
every
if we-
citizen.
If we
I mean,
open
they're the
it-
ones who's paying for it.
If we open it up to every citizen, then we'd have to post it as a public meeting, and your committee meetings are typically just with those people that provide the technical assistance, so. It is a open meeting, but it's just not a public meeting.
Everybody straight with that?
Well, I appreciate your.
I don't like
Perspective on
closed
that.
meetings.
I tend to agree that a committee meeting really needs to be able to say things that you might not say in the open meeting, that they're not making any decisions, they're just making recommendations to us, and this one's open. So I understand the fact that it's a committee meeting to just bring wild and crazy ideas and then try to think through them. So I tend to agree with that. I was nervous about telling the judge and the mayor that they can't be there, because it can be real educational to hear the back and forth and the different aspects. You're not gonna wanna go to every one, I know. But if there's something controversial and you wanna.
You need to know both sides of it.
And hear the, yeah. That part made me
Not
nervous.
necessarily, that's just, with these current bylaws, if a member of the public walks in that committee meeting and sits down, are they gonna be allowed to stay, or are we gonna move?
How does that work, Joe?
I let them stay. I just
I
don't think we
would-
need to advertise this.
I don't,
But it,
unless it's posted as a closed executive session, I would hate to be part of an organization that.
Right. I don't like closed meetings.
but this is a committee, it's not a,
Yeah, but it's still a public meeting, and we're still dealing with the public.
how does,
But again, that scenario, if somebody wanders in here and sits down here.
Now, you don't have to allow for public comment. I mean, if they want to sit and listen, you don't have to allow for public comment. But telling somebody they can't stay because this is a closed meeting is a red flag.
First off, you close the door to prevent that from happening. So, this situation came up in Abilene, where an email was sent out to like a policy board email list about a technical committee meeting. And one of the city attorneys brought up that if you're gonna notify some, you have to notify everybody just like a public meeting. So it's kind of, and when they discussed it, they pretty much left it up to the policy board on how they wanted to handle that. If you want a closed meeting, or do you want it open to the public? And if you open it up to the public, then you fall under the, the public, open meeting act.
Yeah, I'm trying to
But
take
there are
reference.
times when you're gonna bring, ask somebody from, local expert on, whatever, you're gonna bring somebody in for their input at a meeting. So you can't completely say it's closed to just committee members.
Well, that's what the executive session is for. I mean, you can post a meeting, and then if you have something that you don't want the public in, then you put it in an executive. You've got a spot in the agenda, and you're able to go into executive and close meeting. I don't see a problem with posting meetings. In fact, I don't see why we would want to have a meeting that we didn't post and allow the public to be at, personally.
And, in support of that thought, I mean, we post these meetings and Rick,
Yeah.
good morning. We've got one person that doesn't have to be here.
Well, I think he's designee of
Is
the
he?
TAC committee. So-
Yeah, he is. So, it is a complication with setting up technical advisory committees and committees beyond that. So it is a good discussion to have at this point, and it's something we haven't experienced up to now, so.
Well, once they meet and elect kind of the chairman of their committee, the committee can call a meeting, which committee can, without having to go through all the posting, but not ever, I would never designate it a closed meeting.
Well, we're not calling it a closed meeting, it's just called a committee meeting.
Call it a workshop.
Yeah, pretty much works.
But Mayor, I'm not trying to circumvent your concerns on that.
The only part that concerned me was just telling the policy board that they cannot attend. That was just pretty extreme language, I thought. And there may be a bigger problem here than I know about.
Well, should we strike that statement and then allow it to roll as it rolls?
If we don't take any action, then.
My feelings won't be hurt if you guys want to leave it in, and maybe one of you guys that brought it up, so defend it.
No, that's the policy board member can't attend the TAC. No, I can't think of a situation where we would need to ban somebody from that meeting.
I agree.
I agree.
So if we don't take any action, the bylaws stay as is.
So that's not in there.
Well, it's in there as long as you don't approve it, so I guess
No, it's not in there if we don't approve.
yeah, if it's not in there, if you don't.
Okay. So the statement is not there if we don't approve the bylaw changes?
Yes.
Okay.
But I am okay with saying that a member of this board can't be on that board if y'all have strong feelings towards that.
I don't have strong.
I don't have a
feelings.
problem with that.
Again, it could be that either one of you really need to be there to give direction and substance to what's being talked about.
From our perspective, all this is determining is if John DeWitt can be on the technical advisory committee or not. So I'm okay with him not being on it.
Well, especially if I can attend. But
So if we don't approve the bylaws as presented, then everything stays like it is. And we can have appointees to the technical advisory, and no one is banned from the technical advisory meetings.
Yes.
So if we just leave it alone, we haven't changed anything.
I changed it.
I'll entertain a motion for no action. If that's what we need, we need to do that?
Just leave it alone.
I'm happy with that.
Next item.
All righty, item number 7. Organizational reports, A, director's report, B, financial report, C, monthly staff activity report, and D, attendance report.
Well, first item pertains to the technical.
Okay.
See you, buddy.
Thank you, sorry,
We no longer have a quorum, do we?
We do now, because John came in.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got five.
We're all right? Okay.
Good day, Steve. Thank you.
See you later.
This is not an action item.
Okay.
First item is, I know some of you, excuse me, I know some of you are still working on appointing your TAC people. What I want to do is schedule a meeting either at the end of this month or early June, so if you haven't made those appointments, please do so as soon as possible. Also, along those lines, is there anything in particular that you want the TAC to start working on?
I'd love to have a prioritized list of projects. You know, we're gonna have Proposition 1 money that will be dedicated to the MPO. And I don't want us to get to the point like we were last time, where we had to make the decision really quick without having a conversation. So I think a prioritized list of needs, so if the board can choose when we get that money, I think would be helpful.
Sounds good.
I still would like some help in trying to figure out how we set up some sort of procedure, or I guess maybe policy for how we deal with bus stops. Cause there's all these complicating factors like who owns the right of way, who owns the shelter, who's gonna maintain them.
It's still not settled.
Well, and the partnership has gotta be between y'all, the transit district and the city. And I would just like to get to a point where if somebody requests that a bus stop be put in, it doesn't just happen willy-nilly, there's some sort of,
Methodology behind.
yes, to make it fair mostly. Not to mention the transit, we don't have funding to hire staff to maintain them, and so we need to talk about how we work that out. And there's a lot of, as has been pointed out, we're probably losing some advertising revenue because there's opportunity there that's not being taken advantage of. But it may not be quit talking. I mean, if the city owns the right of way, you know, I might not be owed that advertising money, it may be the cities, or we've gotta figure out how to work that out.
We have the right people in the room to start the discussion, so. Okay, Phil,
Earlier, is it Houston Hart that has been designated as first priority for this early
Yes,
round?
yes.
Is there anything that the technical committee would need to look at on that particular project? Or is it pretty well?
I think so. We worked on the pavement design.
Okay.
I don't
And the
know that they would. We could
board's
sure-
already voted on that, I believe, right, that was
For
an
this-
actual.
for that, yeah, for that.
Could sure make a presentation, could have Gary make a
But we could-
presentation on what the
Yeah.
project scope is. I think that would be
Okay.
okay.
Do you want
Uh,
to have an update at the next meeting?
at our next meeting?
Mhm.
Yes. And I guess my question is, and you probably already know the answer to this, is it gonna be fairly smooth, or is the pavement gonna be the kind where, like
It's gonna be ACP.
on Bryant, where
It'll be
you-
the higher,
It'll be a hot mix
Hard
surface, a lot of
surface,
seal coats.
Okay.
better
Great.
riding surface, yes.
Great, that answers that question. That shows my lack of technical expertise, but I do know the difference when I try.
Okay. We'll also be talking about some policies. A lot of cities are adopting complete streets policies and things like that, so we'll be looking at some of those issues. Next, financial report, we've included December, January, and February. Any questions on the financials? Let's see, going to, as of February, we've expended $147,000, so our budget is $225, so we expended about 34%.
And what percentage of the year would that have been?
34, as of February.
34% of the year and 34% of the money?
34% of the money.
Okay. Well, part of the year.
many months of the year is it?
Up through February, and then our fiscal year ends at the end of September.
End of September, so October.
5 months.
So a little behind spend.
Any questions, financials? Up next, we've got the, operations report for, February, March, and April. Any, questions on those?
What page is that in the packet?
81 of 84.
You say you completed February, an item concerning road diets. What did you do?
We did some research on those, just kind of looking at those. It's a concept that's starting to become popular, so just kind of looking into those. That'll be something also that we'll talk to the TAC about. Like I said, we've got the complete streets in there, so they're just different things that we're looking at, trying to make a few improvements in the transportation system. And lastly, got the attendance report. Right now, I show June is canceled. The item number 5 with the long-range plan that we were supposed to discuss, we would have finalized in May, but we'll have to bring that back in May, and then we'll finalize it in June, so there will be a June meeting.
Which would, on normal schedule, be the,
11.
Okay.
Just disregard the cancel for June.
You need any action on 7? Just report.
Just a report.
Number 8 is announcements and our future agenda items. Anyone on the board have anything they need to announce or put on the future agenda? I have one.
Okay.
We had a man from Home Depot here that's been 4 or 5 meetings ago that wanted to do some improvements at the bus stops, and we were supposed to make some decisions and get back to him.
We did.
We
Well,
did.
we got back with him, and then
What
we
did we
haven't
do?
heard back from him in return.
Okay. That was probably the meeting.
Major was
with
involved with that,
Yeah, they
Elmer
were
and I, and
They were gonna basically build their own bus stop there, and then I think we got everybody on board, and then I don't know that anything ever became of it.
right.
We can follow up
At
on
the
that.
time, they were in inventory or something, and were putting it off until they got past a peak workload. Sounds like an excuse, we
Well,
haven't heard back, so we
Why
can
don't you
anything
get in
from-
touch with them and let's have an update on our next meeting, just, cause I'd like to get that started. If it's gonna work, let's do it.
That's a good point.
And if
Yeah.
it's not, let's tell them no.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us some information on that, let's have an agenda item next meeting as to where we are. Anyone else have any items, do I have any public items that would like to be added, any suggestions?
So just your item, Phil, on the Eastern Heart update. Okay.
That'd be great.
Anything else? Well, we have reached item number 9, which is adjournment. Would anyone like to make the motion that we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Then let's vote on it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is over.